Hello and welcome to episode 296 of Retro Encounter, RPGFan's weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and if you listened to the previous week's episode, you probably know what today's topic is. But before we get too deep into that, let's introduce the panel, same as the last week, starting with Peter Triezenberg.
Backed by unpopular demand, it's me.
No comment. And Eva Padilla.
Howdy.
And Alana Hagues.
Hey, y'all.
And Zach Wilkerson.
Hello.
Peter, Eva, Alana, Zach, last week we got irrationally upset talking about a list of 35 video games. This is part 2 of our Essential Ten-2. The Essential 10 was a 2016 episode that we recorded for Retro Encounter, where we were trying to create a top 10 list, a Hall of Fame list of most essential, most recommended, most favorite RPGs or games covered by Retro Encounter, so, slipping some visual novels in there and some such. And we decided to bring it back for its 5-year anniversary. Last year, wow, I don't understand the passage of time anymore. Last week, we had a list of 35 games compiled from 5 top 10 lists from each of the 5 of us. There was overlap, so it ended up being 35. Then made 15 cuts to arrive at a list of 20. And today, we are going to make that list of 20 into a list of 10. I don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but we have to start with 20 and end with 10. That is the rule. And I've already broken one rule because this list, unfortunately, has 21 games. So I'm going to make an executive decision, and unfortunately, I'm afraid Devil May Cry 5 has to depart the list.
Boo. So Devil May Cry 5 has to leave, but Dragon Quest 11 stays? For shame.
Yeah, okay, alright, I'm not gonna touch that, but...
Let's go, let's launch
but because Devil May Cry 5 entered the list through somewhat illicit means last episode, so unfortunately it has to be the first cut today. Trust me, this hurts me more than it hurts you, listener. But now let's go through the actual list that we're going to deal with. In fact, you know what? I'm going to give you 2 for the price of 1. I'm going to tell you 2 lists. One is our 2016 list. Those games were automatically out of the running. They are permanently enshrined as an Essential 10. And then I will tell you the list of 20 finalists. So the 2016 list: Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Chrono Trigger, Diablo 3, Final Fantasy 6, Kingdom Hearts, Mass Effect 2, 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, Persona 4 Golden, Steambot Chronicles, Xenoblade Chronicles. Ha! And the list of 20 that we are discussing today. Bloodborne, Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc, Disco Elysium, Dragon Quest XI, Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy XIV, Final Fantasy Tactics, Lunar the Silver Star, Lunar 2 Eternal Blue, Mother 3, Nier Automata, Persona 5 Royal, Pokemon Black and White, Skies of Arcadia, Stardew Valley, Suikoden 2, Transistor, Undertale, The World Ends With You, and The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Boom. So those latter 20 are what we're going to discuss today, but first I want to reminisce about last week a little bit. This week I think will be a little bit shorter than last week since we're making 10 cuts instead of 15, and we're going to have it less structured, not go round by round and discuss every game in detail. But we did, the last episode was over 2 hours, and we started at a list of 35, ended up a list of 20. Does anyone have a particular, thought, feeling, or regret from the previous episode that we can just shout out here before we start discussing for real?
Probably should have vetoed for drama, shouldn't I, at some point? That was a bit of a disappointment for me.
Yeah, you're the only person that didn't use your veto, but vetoes did save Undertale, Transistor, Danganronpa, and Dragon Quest XI.
And I could have upset some people by saving Breath of the Wild, so, that would have been fun.
Thanks.
I would just like to say that the fact that Yakuza 0 is not on this list is still a tragedy, and I feel that is not a sentiment that is that has gone unagreed with. Jesus Christ, my words. People like Yakuza 0 here.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, Eva. If you hadn't said something, I would have, because Yakuza 0 was on 2 people's lists, and then it got unceremoniously cut when those 2 people had already spent their vetoes. It was going to be my first lock, but then Zach let that dream die, although his dream of getting 9 of his 10 onto the list did survive.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have no regrets, because the last episode was a win.
Zach, what the? Are you serious? Oh,
I went through the lists and did some statistical analysis and may have said that aloud in a strategic manner. In fact,
Zach, I like you, but I am coming so hard after your 9 out of 20 picks on here. That is unconscionable.
Yeah, and Zach, I'm sure, is furious that The Witcher 3, his only one that didn't make the list, isn't on the list.
It was my last choice, so I didn't really care that much about The Witcher 3.
So, Peter, do you have any regrets or thoughts or ideas following the previous episode?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I guess my one regret would probably be letting Transistor live, but we can fix that later.
Okay,
you did not let Transistor live. I brought it into the top 20 through sheer force of will. Don't try me.
The battle lines are drawn in the sand, and I enthusiastically watched the reality show Survivor for a few years in the 2000s. So, Eva, how about we ally a little bit? Maybe help Transistor across the finish line. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do a lot for Transistor, so I think that might be an alliance that we'll make.
All right. Informal alliance for now, but ladies and gents, I think it's time to start discussing it now. I want to. Do we want to start out by discussing something we should cut, or something that we think is a near unanimous lock? Because there are 2 or maybe 3 games that I think will make the final 10 a little easily. Is that fair?
I think talking about those 2 or maybe 3, we're probably thinking of the same ones that are very clear.
Okay,
that are going to move through. Makes the most sense.
All right, so I want to start with 2 of them, and if we decide that they're unanimously on the 10, then they will be the first 2 on the 10. But also, we let them through in the previous episode without really discussing them in enormous detail, in some detail, but not nearly to the level that we for some of the ones that we were really debating. So let's start with Nier Automata.
Yes.
Nier Automata was on 4 of our 5 starting lists, and the 5th person deliberately let it off their list, I believe, to include something because they assumed that it was going to make it through. Is that am I correct in thinking that, Eva?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love this game, and I was like, yeah, a bunch of us on this panel love this game. I don't need to put on this list. So yeah. Nier Automata, we talked about it on Retro Encounter over 2 episodes in early 2020. It was my first time playing a Nier game seriously, because I played the OG Nier for like an hour earlier that decade. But it's really one of the most powerful and great action RPGs I've ever played, and it plays with the ideas of genre and the ideas of what it is to, like what video game journeys are, what save files are, in ways that were incredibly powerful to me. Zach, you joined us on those Nier episodes, didn't you?
I did. Yes, absolutely. We're never talking Nier when I'm on staff that I'm not here. So, Automata is one of the other games that I think we will discuss probably slightly edges it out for my favorite game, but it's not as good as Automata. I think Automata is like almost I hate to say perfect video game, but it does things with the form and the genre to a point that I think is incredibly important. And it's also like super fun to play. Like the Platinum imprint on it is really important, but it also, I've played it, from front to back 3 times, and it moves me and brings me to like a sobbing mess every time, because I think that what it does is actually important. And no other art form could do it. And sure, other video games do that, but not to the power and effect that Nier Automata does. Nier Automata, to me, is like the most essential of the essential 20, I suppose now. It will be.
Yeah, just talking about how it plays through the genre, I was shocked at how they used visual novels and sort of text only, or you could even say sound novel. Like there are like 428 or what's that Sega Saturn sound novel that everyone's gaga about?
Oh God, I don't know.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name.
Yeah, it's oh geez. If only Rob Fenner was still around, he would know exactly what I'm talking about. But
right.
I'll
just say Radical Dreamers as an example. That's
sure.
a sound novel, isn't it?
Yeah. A sound novel is roughly listeners is basically an early version of what we would call a visual novel today, but is even starkly more text and less image. But with accompanying music. Yes.
Wait, should be a scramble.
No.
That's another one.
That's another one, yeah. That's a very good one, in fact. But no, I'm thinking of a different game. But yeah, it uses it has visual novel segments, sound novel segments, shmup segments, which is again a top-down shooter or perhaps bullet hell, where they contextualize shmups into hacking mini games. And parts of the game where you're entering someone's mind or affecting memory somehow in ways that, like, you can tell that these are the design, or like you could, from an auteur sense, Yoko Taro, or from a group sense, the designers. Like, those are genres that the designers love and wanted to express their love for, but also they incorporate them so brilliantly that every time Nier Automata did something different, it felt like a brilliant choice. And the writing is so good, and the side quests are so good. And the characters are so good that I'm not sure you can play this game without getting a powerful emotional response. It's incredible, and
I would be shocked.
My expectations were high going in, not having played one, but knowing it by reputation, and then it met or exceeded every expectation.
Yeah, like even replaying it this year, like for the first time since it came out, was like, it was ridiculous how much my opinion had improved even since I reviewed it back in 2017. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. You gave this an editor's choice in 2017. Like, what's going through your head now? And it's just, yeah, it's just a phenomenal experience. Like, I think the writing in particular, like, I think, you know, sometimes I struggle with RPGs because you really settle on similar things and they do things in ways that I think could be better, but I think Automata twists this like really melancholic, sad story into something really beautiful and hopeful, and it's just does a really wonderful thing with structure and pacing and everything, and like, you know, there are parts of it that maybe don't work, but like, somehow it just comes together really, really well. And yeah, like, I know, like, from discussions online, like, most people, I would say it's basically the defining RPG of the generation. It's certainly action RPG, but like, the first RPG I think of from the PlayStation 4 era is Nier Automata, so I think it's got to be here.
Yeah, for sure. Like, so like postmodernism as a genre description has kind of lost all meaning at this point. But I feel like one game deserves to be called like a postmodern masterpiece, it's Nier Automata. Like, that game does really incredible things with game design and tropes and just plays with the audience's expectations so well. All while delivering just a remarkably thematically coherent story. And it's just, yeah, it's a really incredible experience. It's probably one of the defining games of the past decade. So if we're going to be doing another Essential 10 list, then yeah, I feel like Automata has to be there.
All right, again, we didn't discuss it that much in the previous episode because I felt like if there was a consensus game on the list, this was it. Are there any objections for having me move this to the Essential 10 list right now?
Absolutely not.
Nope.
No.
All right, on the list it goes. This is great. We'll be finished in 90 minutes. This will be completely breezy the whole way through. Am I right? Am I right? Yeah, I know.
Yep, of course.
Okay, now the second game that I think is a near consensus. Final Fantasy Tactics. All right, Final Fantasy Tactics makes the list automatically. No arguments.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with you on that at all.
Oh, okay.
I will stand Tactics, and I'm guessing you mean 14.
I did mean 14.
I would stand Tactics, except it's in good company.
All right, Final Fantasy Tactics, we'll have a discussion later this episode, but we are talking about Final Fantasy XIV. It was the other game that was on four people's lists. I was the only person that didn't have it on a list, and that's not because I don't love FF14. It's because I wanted to sneak in a different Final Fantasy game on the list instead. FF14 is, if RPGFan, the website, the whole staff, the whole community has a signature game, it's probably FF14. FF14 or one of its expansions have won Game of the Year on the website twice and finished second a third time. and all five of us are FF14 players in various stages of our obsession, and it's brilliant from a world building, from a writing, from a character, from a game design standpoint. Like, if I were talking about my favorite boss battles that I've done over the past 5 or 6 years of RPGs, like several of them would be in FF14, and that's just again one tiny candle on the beautiful cake that is FF14. Let's talk about it some more. Who has FF14 feelings to share?
I mean, I'll just talk briefly about like the narrative standpoint. It's such an incredible game in the way it spins its story. And some of the characters, I think, are some of the most expertly written I've ever seen. In particular, the character of Ardbert. I won't really go into too many spoilers around this character, but Ardbert is a character that can only exist within the narrative structure of Final Fantasy XIV, as well as the broader sort of meta commentary that is trying to tell. Like, you can have Ardbert in a regular JRPG and he'd be a good character, he'd be fun, but what makes him so incredible is the context of the kind of the terrible launch of 14 leading to this eventual rise to having millions upon millions of people playing it. So for things like that alone, for its just such unique qualities within an MMO, I think it should easily be on this list.
I want to talk about Ardbert for just a minute. It would take 3 full paragraphs to properly explain who and what Ardbert is to the uninitiated. But he appeared in the opening cinematic to 2010 FF14 launch, then was a villain in part of the post-game in 2015's Heavensward, so maybe in 2016. And then he was a very important NPC, and now maybe one of the most beloved NPCs in the whole game, following the events of Shadowbringers, and again in 2019 and 2020. And just talking about his relationship to his buddy Seto would would make me want to, read an entire or play an entire new game about Ardbert and Seto. It's FF14 is just such an incredible selection of characters in this game.
Yeah, I mean, as the person who probably has spent the most time in current endgame, it's. I think the thing that's remarkable about it is that there's really nothing about the game that it doesn't do really well and accessibly. Because obviously, anytime, I know Eva shares a similar story. The first time I logged into this game, I was like, oh my gosh, there is way too much going on here. But after, I don't know, 3-4 hours, I had, a pretty good understanding. And, there are things that I still pick up now, a year and a half into playing it basically every day. But, I mean, I think that it arguably has the 2 best Final Fantasy stories. I think that something we just mentioned is the only thing that it really compares, personally, which is Tactics. But Heavensward and Shadowbringers, both phenomenal. But man, it's those boss fights and that music. Oh, I agree with you about the boss fights. I think that the 5.3 trials, phenomenal. The 3.3 ones, all the 4 Lord trials are just fantastic.
I love 4 Lords and Warring Triad so much that those.
Yeah.
It's just it's a cornucopia of love of the genre, love of the series, and it's the most important series, at least in America, for RPGs. And it distills what we love about it so well, but it also brings its own narrative tacks to it. It does so many things so much better than other video games that it's almost shameful. It's amazing. And I have nothing left to do in that game, and I still log on almost every day. I'll go run a dungeon today. Why not? I don't really need to. But I still do. Because it's my comfort food, and it's also my brain food, and it's also it's as difficult as you want it to be too. The MSQ is not hard.
You don't do your roulettes to try to get every job up to level 80 to try to get that Amaro mount? Is that just me?
I'm lazy. I don't really like setting up my controller hotbar over and over again. Although it's not hard, which is also nice. It's just time consuming. But the point is, I think 14 is the quintessential MMO. It's in some ways the quintessential Final Fantasy. I think that makes it belong on the list.
And looking at the previous list, the 2016 list, there is only one Final Fantasy and 0 MMOs on that list, unless you very, very generously interpret Diablo 3 as an MMO. So I think, I mean, FF14 has carved its position, I think. Alana and Peter, have you popped off yet on FF14?
Not yet, no. I did a little bit last episode, but, like, yeah, Eva and Zach have basically covered everything, and, like, even as someone who has, like, I only came back, like, 6 months ago at this point now, and, like, I'm in the middle of Shadowbringers MSQ, like, 5.0, roughly. The stuff with Seto I literally did the day before recording, so Oddbert in particular is very, very, very special right now, and Seto as well, but, like, yeah, like, the amount of attachment I have to that game within such a short space of time is ridiculous, and, like, I've still got tons to do. I'm very tempted by the Amara mount. I'm like, no, I can't level up a healer as well, because I can't even tank right now, like, I'm just terrified of it, but I know that people would do it, like, I know that people would let me do stuff like that, and, like, it's easy to pick up, like, people are really friendly. I think I mentioned the community last week, actually, just how, like, really good they are, and, like, yeah, like, I haven't had a bad experience since coming back. Like, I had a few 4 or 5 years ago when I used to play originally, and that, like, put me off coming back, but, like, coming back this time was, like, completely, like, all those things you told yourself about, like, they're not true, and yeah, I'm so glad I came back. Like, it's been the best thing I've done this year, and it's my favorite thing I've done this year is play Final Fantasy XIV over and over again. Like, I love it. And you were talking about tactics and boss fights. How's that Thunder God Sid fight in Ormond Monastery? Oh, it's so good. I die every time, and I love it.
I was thinking of turn 8 in the Eden raids, where you fight an ice themed boss, and there's there's a moment of character drama when the boss is around 5% or 10% health. The ice
holy
breaking crap. And the sound and the song that plays during that is a twisted up arrangement of a song from 2014 or 2015 that inverts some of the chord progressions and patterns of the original version. It's crazy. Like, someone will write doctoral dissertations on either the soundtrack or the narrative of this game, because it's just so unbelievably good.
Yeah,
lock it in.
It's essential.
All right, are we ready to lock it in? Speak up now or forever hold your peace.
Do it.
Go for it.
No objections. So, whoops. Okay, I pressed the wrong button. Now it's locked in. No objections.
Right.
It's like the opposite of playing a Phoenix Wright game. All right. Okay, now it gets a little bit more complicated, because there are very popular, very loved games in the remaining 18, but I don't think any of them are consensus like these two. So I'm going to leave it up to the floor. Suggest either a lock or a cut right now, and we'll again, we're not setting anything in stone yet, other than those two. Throw something out there.
Lock for Mother 3.
Okay.
Lock for Mother 3.
I'm going to have to support that. That's on my list, first of all. But second of all, I think that it is narratively rich in a way that, in some ways, like, it's emotionally rich in a way that Automata is not. It does some really interesting things with turn-based combat. It is such a powerful statement about, like, capitalism and the ways in which people are used, but also our connections to each other in spite of those things. I mean, I think that it's important. I think it's an important game.
I'm going down the list, seeing if there are 8 games I would put ahead of Mother 3.
Yeah, that's my problem.
And
like, yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, Mother 3 is one of the best games I've played in the last 5 years. Yeah, it's got that personal touch that I really adore in video games. And it deals with grief in really sensible, mature ways, which I really love, but
and it deals.
I'm not good at being committed to stuff.
Like, no. It's all right. This whole episode is a discussion.
Yeah,
and it deals with, like, sort of high level big brain themes. I mean big brain literally and not in jest. like capitalism and environmentalism and grief and loss in ways that are really awesome, and it does so with an aesthetic that is, similar to Earthbound, kind of like clean sprites drawn in crayon. You know what I mean?
It's like Peanuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what we compared it to.
Yeah, I think this is not my metaphor, but the thing I've always heard of to describe Earthbound is, again, not this game, but its predecessor, the Cthulhu mythos mixed with the Charlie Brown and Snoopy show. And I think in like a Peanuts aesthetic with these, with a lot of darkness and complexity in its narrative and scene, I think Mother 3 is awesome. But again, if I was trying to make a list of 8 that I want, Mother 3 either isn't on it or finishes 8th is kind of my feeling. So I'm halfway on Mother 3, but I am leaning towards supporting it, I think, even though I did battle it a little bit in the previous episode. Peter or Eva? Oh, go ahead, Eva.
Yeah, so I mean, I think especially with the aesthetic, it makes the heartbreak and tragedy of it. It kind of reminds me of kind of these painted clown faces that are just kind of oozing out tragedy. So it's like just some of the most devastating things I've ever seen in a video game presented with a smile. And that's a lot of, and I think that's so emblematic of kind of the, not to get too into the politics, but you have me here, so that's going to happen. The capitalist structure where it's like, where you have these products and you have this wide assortment of choices, quote unquote, of products with which you can consume, and it's all brought to you with a smile, but it's built on the back of an oppressed class or multiple oppressed classes. And I feel like Mother 3 does this and so many other articulations of a capitalist structure so well, from a environmental standpoint, from a racialized standpoint. I think it's really good, and it's one of the most coherent critiques I've seen of it, not just in a video game, which it is the best I've seen in a video game, but in just about any other media. I mean, when Lucas returns back to the town in Mother 3, it is such a haunting, powerful portrayal of a community that's moved from more collectivist mentality to this sort of individual society built on capitalist intentions. I think it's extremely important for people to play this game in any which way that they can.
Right, and I think that what makes it maybe even more remarkable to me is that it never comes off as like polemic. Like it feels like so baked into the narrative, and and there's no way that I think anybody could play this game, no matter how, I don't know, capitalism loving they are, and not see the logic in what it's doing. Like I don't think anybody would be like, what play this game and be like, oh, that doesn't seem realistic. Like, no, I think that outside of like, I don't know, someone being like literally possessed. I mean, like outside of that, like. From a psychological perspective and a sociological perspective, I think everybody would view this game as giving you a realistic portrayal of what would happen under these circumstances. And actually, I think like sometimes it doesn't punch quite as hard as it could with like things like TV and things like that. But I think that where it needs to punch hard, it does, and it makes its point so well, while also being like so beautifully grounded in the stories of these people.
But Zach, if you want a story that's critical of capitalism and has a lot of very hard punching, let me direct you to Yakuza 0.
Hey, there you go. I don't want to comment.
But the combat's way better in Mother 3, so...
Okay, I'm not going to comment on that, but one piece of Mother 3
is dead. Long
one piece of Mother 3 combat that I thought was maybe my favorite part of the whole game is the final battle between Lucas and the masked boy, which is, I mean, you want to talk about a confrontation that will bring tears to your eyes. We've already talked about Nier Automata and Final Fantasy XIV quite a bit. That final battle is little more than timed attacks, defenses, and heals, but holy crap, the context of it and the drama of it and the dialogue around it is, again, one of the most memorable final bosses in my memory, full stop.
I mean, and Earthbound did a great job with their final boss too, but I actually think this, because it's so much more personal, makes it more moving.
And also Mother 3, for that final battle, it's an RPG-ass RPG. For Earthbound, you're basically triggering a set of cutscenes. And the cutscenes are powerful and cool, but in Mother 3, it's like, no, you have to do RPG things to survive, like you're fighting Dragon Lord's true form in Dragon Quest 1. But it also has this incredible emotional thrust that it's that I really, really don't want to spoil, so I'm not going to go into more detail. But again, when in the last episode, I sort of was battling against Mother 3 being on the list because there was other games I cared about more, but those games are mostly gone, including Yakuza 0. So I'm leaning towards putting this on the list. Peter, you've been a little quiet. You've played Mother 3, right?
No, I haven't. That's why I'm being quiet.
My bad.
No, you're good. It's it's one of those things that I really want to play it at some point, but too many games. But that's why I'm like, I don't really have an opinion either way on this one. I feel as though if you guys all feel strongly enough about putting it on the list, that's a good lock. I'm looking at the list and seeing stuff I would probably be more interested in seeing on there, but that's neither here nor there. I don't have anything against it.
Let's not lock Mother 3 yet. I think it is a very strong contender right now, but let's add a couple more games to the 2 or 3 or 4 people really care a lot about this game list before we start moving things into more locks. Is everyone all right with that?
Yeah, and I have my next, which I think might have been your third choice when you're 2 or 3 that might go forward.
It's definitely one of 2 games, but go ahead, Zach.
I think Suikoden 2 belongs on the list.
Okay, that was one of my guesses.
Yeah. I think 3 of us had it on the list. And to me, Suikoden 2 is, in terms of turn-based RPGs, it's unsurpassed. It's my favorite RPG, but that's not necessarily a good vote for it. But I think that what it does with character and what it does with the ability to show people's connections through differing political viewpoints and differing ways of living life, I think is really important, particularly in our current times. But I also think that it's, first of all, the combat is so snappy and so fun. It's a delight to build up that castle. It's still my favorite castle in Suikoden. It is, I think, by far the best of one of the most essential series of RPGs. It's got, I think, the best villain in all RPGs. Luca Blight, I think, is not even the best part of the game, which I've said probably ad nauseum. But I think that Suikoden 2 moves me and compels me in ways that even Automata doesn't. And it's a game that I will continue to play over and over and over again. And there's not a single person I know who I wouldn't say, hey, go play Suikoden 2.
I played Suikoden 2 for the first time in 2018. It was the first time I made a sincere effort to finish a Suikoden game, although I had tried 1 and 3 already by then. And it frankly blew me away. This is a game with hundreds of characters, over 100 of which join your team literally, and I won't say every one of those 108 is brilliant. Some of them are just, a blacksmith that's marginally better than the previous blacksmith. But so many of them are either have a super fun recruitment quest or are a key cog in this brilliantly politically charged story that's maybe the sort of the coolest implementation of sort of nation level politics in any RPG on this list. Maybe FF14 is as good, and even though it's this huge cast and is about warring nations, there are moments of cleverness that are incredibly memorable. Zach and Alana, I'm gonna forget different character names and nation names, but the moments where those 2 orders of knights all throw their badges on their ground on the ground.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, Camu. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're abandoning their jerk of a king for a better cause, or everything that happens between Rio and Joey in the last act of the game, And
whole game, really. Like, they're the core of that game, really, in an army as well. Like, you know, there's this huge war going on, and, like, yeah, it really drills, like, it really, really nails community. And like you were saying, like, there are small cogs in this cast that, you know, don't have as much of a role to play, but everyone's got a personality. And that is just a community. There are some smaller members in every community that are vital to keeping the cogs spinning, right? And that's exactly what Suikoden 2 does. Like, that castle is only as complete as the people who are in it, and, you know, that's why everybody has a different role to play, whether they're in combat or not. But, like, yeah, it's that main trio. Like, I had perceptions before going into Suikoden 2 that it would just be this game that covers, like, a pretty broad, like, spectrum of, like, politics of war and things like that. But no, I didn't realize that actually it was about these three kids who have spent their lives together and are suddenly torn apart because two people have different views and want to tackle the situation differently. And I can't sit there and judge either side because, like, you know, I love Joey, and Rio is, like, doing the right thing, but Joey is also doing, you know, it's reasonable what he's doing. Like, I get it. And I'm so conflicted and tormented that I don't know, like, they are the heart of that game, and I think they are what makes it really special, and, like, people don't sell it as a character RPG, and it totally is.
Yeah, like, you think of Suikoden 2, or I'll go into my views on what Suikoden was and what Suikoden 2 was before I started playing it. I knew it was a game where you recruited 108 characters, and it was about a war, so I figured it was going to be, you know, sort of large scale groups of characters fighting each other, kind of like Ogre Battle or something. But it really is character driven with these three main characters, two of which become rising stars on opposite sides of the war, and both of them want basically the same outcome, but with totally different methods. And the third character is just completely gutted that her two favorite people in the world are fighting and might kill each other.
I think that it's ultimately like it not as much as Automata maybe, but like it's deeply humanistic in ways that I think are really important and really beautiful. And the fact that it's like just like incredibly fun and quick and snappy to play, I think is really important. But Eva, I know you've played this game. What do you think?
Oh yeah. Oh my bad, Eva. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's cool. I mean, I don't really have much to add to what y'all are saying about it. It is a game that doesn't really play to a whole lot of my sensibilities in terms of aesthetics or narrative or setting, and yet I still think it deserves a spot on this list. So I think, like, that's probably the most that I can contribute, is that this is a game that isn't, like, trying to appeal to anything that I, like, really, really adore in a game, and yet I still thought it was an excellent game that deserves to be one of our essential 10.
Oh, and one minor aside, if there's any game on this list that I insist you, the person who has not played this game, play with a guide, it's this one. Because it's, I think it's sort of crucial that you recruit everyone and see the best available ending. Because
I mean, there's no endings at stake here, but, like, there's another game on this list that relies on recruitment and base building, Mike Sollosi. Like, but yeah, just to butt in really quickly, this also won our Best PlayStation RPGs episode on Retro.
It did, yeah. That was, early 2020 or late 2019?
By like a country mile too, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. There was 4 people on that panel, including 3 of us, and it finished first or second on every person's list.
It did.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what Eva's saying is important too. Like, it's the fact that it appeals to me aesthetically and also from a gameplay perspective in all the ways. It's why it's my favorite game. But I just think it almost like perfects the 90s formula of RPGs in ways that I think is really important. I think it's great.
Yeah, I can't think of many. I mean, the PlayStation 1 was a really great era anyway, but, like, there aren't many other RPGs outside of Final Fantasy maybe that are quite as universally loved as Suikoden 2 from such a broad spectrum of people as well. Like, it's kind of incredible how much support this series has got, like, almost more than any other series. Like, I know the Breath of Fire stuff does, like, really well and stuff, but, like, anytime you mention Suikoden, anywhere, like, this flock of people come out and it's like, oh my gosh, like, especially now with the Eiyuden coming in 2023, like,
you stole my heart.
Yeah. You've got an extra few months to wait now. Like,
yeah, not only did it win our best PS1 game episode, or top 10 PS1 games episode, it was the most requested game for us to play on the podcast for the first 3 years or so of the podcast being around.
Someone named Zach Wilkerson may have emailed retro at rpgfan.com.
Possibly.
So we get into. Right before I started.
Okay, I don't think I want to lock it in yet, but it is definitely not getting cut at this time. We have 16 more games to talk about, so let's move on. Someone else bring a game to the forefront. Whether you think it's a suggestion for a yes or a suggestion to cut.
I have my possible suggestion for a lock would be Pokemon Black and White.
Huh. All right, now I'm conflicted here because Pokemon Gen 5, I think, is my favorite generation of Pokemon just playing through the game. And, I mean, what makes it essential that you couldn't put any other Pokemon game here?
So, I mean, yes, but, okay. Part of my rationale is that I do really want a Pokemon game on the list. So, and in that case, you're right, you could probably put any of those games on here, and it would probably be equally valid. In Black and White's case, though, however, I think that game, more than anything else, than any other game in the series, is just... It really excels at that sort of... The design sensibilities of the time that it was released in. Because this is right before they transitioned into full 3D. But they decided to stop using, like, those really static sprites from the previous generations. So you have these, like, really gorgeous pixel art for all of the Pokemon. And in general, the aesthetics of Gen 5 are just, to me, that's like the first thing I think of when I think about the Nintendo DS. Mm-hmm. Like, that aesthetic is really what sells it for me. And in general, too, just as a Pokemon game, Unova's a really fun setting. It has a really, really great selection of characters across, even in the sequel. I really like Charon and Bianca. I really like all the gym leaders and how they kind of get together at the end. And the fact that they basically filled in an entire regional Pokedex. They added this new regional Pokedex of 150 brand new Pokemon. It really recaptures that experience from the first generation where everything you encounter is something new. And you can't really rely on your old favorites. You gotta kind of figure out what these new Pokemon are and really get to know them. And as a result, I have much stronger affinity for Gen 5's Pokemon than the new Pokemon in a lot of other gens. Because I can't just, I already know that Tyranitar is good. I'm gonna put Tyranitar in my party. Like, yeah, I'm gonna use this weird mole-looking thing. Because
Excadrill.
Because Excadrill is awesome.
My beautiful steel boy. I mean, you're talking about things that this did differently from previous generations, and its really good cast of characters. How dare you not mention N yet? The Messiah-like figure whose dream is to free all Pokemon from captivity, which is about as brilliant and as subversive a main villain as they've ever had in Pokemon. Although the exact circumstances of the final encounter of the game change a little bit after with what's going on between the main character and N. Again, this is what I think it's maybe the most interesting Pokemon game for the bold decisions it makes in the story, and by not bringing back any Pokemon from the previous gens until the post game. I think that Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 have a better post game because the Pokemon World Tournament is dope, and Black and White don't give you a ton of stuff to do after you beat the game. But as a standalone Pokemon journey, it is fascinating. I don't know if I want it in the 10 though. I think there are definitely 8 games other than Nier and FF14 that I would put ahead of it.
It's so hard because, like, actually, I've had this question asked to me before. Like, someone's like, if someone has never played a Pokemon game, like, what would you recommend? And, like, Sun and Moon has come up as a thing, but, like, I think Black and White is a really good starting point as well, because actually, if you're someone who plays, like, RPGs and you've never played a Pokemon game, then one of the things I miss from Pokemon, and it's probably a stupid thing because, like, you know, who plays Pokemon for the story? But actually, I almost compare Gen 6, 7, and 8 all the time to Black and White. And Black and White is, like, maybe my second favorite gen. Like, my favorite gen is probably technically Gen 2, but, like, the remakes of Gold and Silver. Like, they're my two favorite games. But, like,
good choice.
Yeah, Pokemon Black and White has a story, and it's not, like, incredible, but I think it's really, really interesting. I love, like, my interest in the series have changed over the years, and, like, the way that Pokemon are integrated into the world, the way that people interact with them, the way that they're treated, the ecology and the ethics and things like that come up. But also, like, Peter already said this, like, Gen 5 is like, nope, these are 150 new Pokemon, you have to use these. That's it. And the way I play Pokemon anyway is that I will never use a previous gen Pokemon unless it's got, like, a brand new evolution per gen. So, like, it wasn't a problem for me when it was a big complaint when it first came out. It's not a complaint anymore because the Pokemon fan base are a fickle group of people.
Oh, yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's putting it mildly.
Yeah, but, like, there's lots of really interesting designs there, and I think, like, the animated sprites really help, obviously, because I think they were slightly animated in Platinum. They just started then, and then Black and White was where they, like, evolved that, and they were fully, like, animated and had so much more personality. But yeah, like, it's hard, because, like, Pokemon is an RPG, but, like, recommending it to somebody who likes RPGs, it's really hard sometimes. This is probably the one I would go for in most cases, and I love it. But, like, in the same way, like, I'm more confident in putting Mother 3 on the list, and 100% more confident in putting Suikoden 2 on the list than I am Black and White. I love Pokemon Black and White, like, second favorite, maybe joint favorite gen. But, like, we're like, the 20 games, like, the 2 definites, and then other than the couple that are mine exclusives, like, it's going to be a tough one.
And I think part of the reason I like Black and White so much is that because I had played 4 previous generations of Pokemon, or more, depending, you know, on how you would line up the remake. So I had played, let's say, 6 Pokemon games with dozens of hours into each, and then Pokemon Black and White's really awesome changes and ideas and concepts were that much cooler from how it was a disruptor in a way. But as a standalone Pokemon game front to back, I think it's great, but I think that part of why I like it so much is because of my history with Pokemon. So I don't know if I would recommend it as the first Pokemon game to a new player, or even an RPG fan who hasn't played a Pokemon game. I would probably say Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or Sun Moon, or maybe even Let's Go Eevee or Pikachu ahead of Black and White. Okay, so that's a lot of Pokemon discussion that we didn't go quite as deeply into last week, but I think for now we're going to hold Pokemon Black and White to a maybe spot. It's not deemed essential yet, but let's move on to something else. Eva or Alana, do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, I'll throw something in that I didn't actually put on my list, but I think is an essential part of RPG fan history. Lunar the Silver Star.
Oh, yes.
I want to maybe put it for consideration for the 10.
I am going to move Lunar the Silver Star and Eternal Blue to the list, and my proposition is either Eternal Blue makes it or neither of them do. Because Lunar 2 is a better video game than Lunar 1 in every respect, and I think that for
I cannot corroborate.
And hold on a second. It does reflect RPG Fan's history, as RPGFan.com used to be LunarNet.com, and but also I don't want to give Zach any more treats because
Wow.
You're giving me a treat.
Bitter much?
Bitter,
Right?
yes. Petty, yes. And revenge for Yakuza 0, yes.
Okay, so in all seriousness, here's the thing. I think that one of the 2 Lunars should be on this list. And I would be happy if Eternal Blue made it instead of the Silver Star, but I think Silver Star Story a complete, or whatever version you're looking at, I think the PS1 version is like sort of the definitive version of Silver Star, is, I disagree with you, the better video game. I like the characters better in Silver Star Story. I like Kyle and Jessica's interplay. Jessica in particular, I think is just incredible. I do think that the main characters, like, romance story in Eternal Blue is better with Lucia. But I think that there is a certain spirit of, like, innocence and joy and, like, just, like, pure Saturday morning cartoon beauty that Silver Star Story Complete captures in a way that I don't think Eternal Blue does. At least if we're looking at, like, the PS1 versions. If we're comparing Sega CD versions, I think that Eternal Blue is, like, clearly superior. But I just think that there's like a magic to Silver Star Story Complete that I think is important and makes it superior to Eternal Blue. But I would be ecstatic if either Lunar game made the list, because I think that one of the two of them is, like, essential for a particular genre and type of RPG that is, like, incredibly important to the genre. Like, Tales doesn't exist without Lunar coming first. I think it's important.
I also think that Lunar is important, and that both of these games possess a sort of a spirited early 90s anime innocence that a lot of other RPGs don't capture the same way. But I think that Ron Farr and Jean and Leo are better than the entire supporting cast in Lunar 1. And Lunar 2 had better quest design and dungeons than Lunar 1. Like, Lunar 1, even on the better PS1 version, is kind of miserable to play through nowadays. There are a few almost unforgivably grindy or poorly designed dungeons or bosses. And when I replayed both of these games in, I think either 2017 or 2018, like Lunar 1 was way less fun than Lunar 2, and Lunar 2 does the first, at least the complete version. I'm not sure if this is true in the Sega CD version. It has maybe my favorite epilogue in any RPG, because the
epilogue is retained between the two of them. It's
okay, good. But it is like allowing to revisit most of the world in new contexts and sort of complete 2 super dungeons to obtain a better ending, and also make give you sort of your complete team of 5 for the first time in the whole game, because for most of the game there's sort of one character you can't control and the rest of the cast comes and goes, but you sort of get your true final party in that epilogue. Like, I think Lunar 2 is just more fun than Lunar 1, and I would, if I were to replay any Lunar game, it would be Lunar 2 every time. And it also gives you the context of why the world's called Lunar in the way the first game doesn't. I just think it's better straight up, and I would not mind a Lunar game being on the Essential 10, but I think it should definitely be Eternal Blue and not Silver Star.
I wish I'd played 2 at this point. I'm like 2/3 of the way through the Silver Star Story, or Silver Star Story Complete, I guess. I think you made a good point, Zach. Like, Tales couldn't exist without Lunar, but, like, obviously the spiritual successor, Grandia, wouldn't exist. And, like, there are so few RPGs ever that just have this, like, real romantic adventurous spirit. I could, again, think of another game on this list that I might have already referred to once today about adventure.
Maybe we should put that game on the list instead of either of these two.
I mean, that should be number 1 at the 10, obviously. Like, but, like, it's... I'll be honest, I've not had any problems with the bosses so far in Lunar. The grinding, yes, to a degree. Yeah, the dungeons aren't brilliant.
It's really just the sewer, and then the science field, maybe, and then the water dragon cave, maybe.
Oh, I thought the water dragon cave was fine. I mean, I guess I just want to go in and out of water.
I'm just vaguely remembering when I played through this game a couple years ago. But
yeah, but, like, I think for, like, because obviously the original Lunar is, like, Silver Star. Was it 91 or 92? 93 maybe? Yeah. So, like, it doesn't feel like that in some ways. Like, it does in other ways, but I think it captures a really essential spirit that I don't think many other games have done since. But yeah, obviously I haven't played 2.
I think if we're comparing the two, and I think that you and I, Mike, are never going to agree on like what the better Lunar game is. There's no
Probably
way, because I'm strongly of the other opinion. But I think that the thing that distinguishes it, even if we're just talking about like a difference of opinion, like we're talking about the Silver Star, is like the cutscenes are like unique and important, and the Silver Star story did it first, and I personally think it did it better. And I think it's like more unique and more beautiful. And I think I have some massive problems with the narrative in Eternal Blue that I don't want to spoil for anybody who's currently on this podcast. But I think there are some things about it that I think are patently ridiculous, and like moments that are supposed to be emotional that I think are just stupid in Eternal Blue. And I can't say that about Silver Star Story.
It better not be anything to do with Ron Farr or Jean.
No, of course not. No,
Okay. Okay.
The fact that I can't say it should give it away.
Sure.
I should say the seventh main character, Mystaire.
I still haven't figured out what that guy's deal
either.
is.
That's
a mystery that will endure till the end of time.
I think the combat is just as good. If you're like comparing the two PS1 versions, the combat, I actually think that like the PS1 version of Silver Star Story Complete is like a more fair challenge. Lunar 2, because of literally one boss fight in the Sega CD version, they made it too easy in the PS1. They strip out so much of the character of that game that I think was important in the Sega CD version. I think that if I was going to recommend one Lunar game, it would be Silver Star Story Complete, because it is more complete in my opinion. Haha. And I also just think it's more magical. And I think it's more important from like an RPG perspective.
I really don't know. I think that Lunar 2 like hits the cycle, sort of raises a conflict, resolves the conflict, and then fixes the less satisfying parts of the ending in ways that make it more satisfying than Lunar 1 to me. And I don't think any character in Lunar 2 is as annoying as Nash. And regarding the combat,
but I kind of love Nash.
He grows up. He's growing up where I am.
Yes, I find Nash frustrating until he improves. But still, I think the combat is significantly better in Lunar 2 because just characters have more than 8 skills, and there's more efficacy and tricks that you can play around with in Lunar 2. And every character feels different in a way that in Lunar 1 it's like what is Kyle good for other than some meathead power attacks that Alex kind of also has.
What is Leo good for, except for what Hero can do?
Earth element versus Wind element, and both of them have 8 moves instead of 4, and his attacks are significantly different other than a few of like the single target stuff. But
in terms of like what's actually useful, I guess.
Yeah.
I understand your point.
But I think the moveset and character diversity is stronger in Lunar 2, and I care about that a lot. I don't want to cut one yet.
All right, well, shall we do one that you were toying with earlier that I think should be there because we actually don't have any strategy RPG representation across either list yet? I think Final Fantasy Tactics should be locked in. Sorry to butt in again, but
no, please.
I think, if we're debating over 2 games in a series and we still haven't committed to a third game on this list, I don't think anyone on this podcast would disagree that Final Fantasy Tactics is the essential strategy RPG.
Well, you would assume that.
Final Fantasy Tactics is my favorite PlayStation game. I adore it. I even deliberately didn't go on the FF Tactics episode of Retro Encounter in 2015 because I was worried I would talk too much on it. That was my weird podcast attitude 6 years ago. But Peter, you voiced an objection of sorts. Why do you think FF Tactics shouldn't go on the list?
Tactics is amazing, and I want to stress that enough, that it's a really, really great game and really rewarding once you get into it. However, it's part of what makes it so great is also, I think, what makes it not essential, because I think it is that the beginning portions of Tactics are really daunting to get through. I think that it has a lot of grinding, it's like that game's difficulty curve is less of a difficulty curve and more of a slamming your head into a brick wall until finally it gets easy. And
if you're not really
you had
comfortable,
another one later on, though.
If you're not really comfortable with the game,
yeah, I don't.
If you're not comfortable with the game, the first 4 or 5 maps are very challenging, and then there's another difficulty spike in Chapter 3 out of 4 that is pretty infamous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in general, I think Tactics is a very good game, and story-wise, it is like peak. Evil East is an amazing setting. The themes it explores, the characters, all of that is excellent. Mitsuno is a phenomenal writer. But I think as a game, Tactics is it's extremely unbalanced. I think the difficulty curve is all over the place. I think like I said, I think it is a little messy at points. And this, take this with a grain of salt, considering I'm also not great at strategy RPGs. But that's and then I also feel as though, this is just my mentality for top 10 lists. I look at it and go, there can be only one, and since we've already locked in 14,
they're totally different though. It's like comparing I can't draw any comparisons right now. And FF9 is also waiting, and I'm gonna fight for that. I don't have any confidence in it, but that's my second favorite game ever.
But under those same conditions, I would also vote to cut FF9.
But under those same conditions, Alana mentioned this before, there are no strategy RPGs on the 2016 list or any of our 2021 lists, and I think that would merit it, a point in its favor.
It's the only strategy RPG I'd probably go back and play. And you're right. It is a little bit daunting, I think. And I think, Peter, I don't really love strategy RPGs. That's almost a meme for this show, right? That I don't like them. And I played FF Tactics for the first time in 2020.
Swears, yes.
Correct, yes.
Wait a second. What about the strategy RPG segments in Suikoden 2?
I don't like those, but it's quite well publicized. It's the only thing I don't like about this game.
Maybe we should delete Suikoden 2 from the list.
No, you are not taking Suikoden 2, really? Probably should be in there.
I was saying that in jest, but I love FF Tactics. I compared FF Tactics to Suikoden 2 a lot when we recorded the podcast about it, because I think the relationship between Ramza and Delita is not really the same, but a fair comparison to the relationship between Rio and Joey. Mm-hmm. And again, a story of a friendship of two young men being told over this sort of national conflict that goes incredible places is a very generalized way of summarizing either of those two stories. But FF Tactics has a brilliant story, great characters, and so much fun in the different potential for tinkering and action within that job system. There's nothing in any game on this list like dealing with calculator magic in FF Tactics, or making a summoner samurai, or a dual wielding punch monk ninja, except for maybe the actual monk job in FF14. But just the fun in tinkering and the fun and potential and what you can do in strategy is what was eye-opening to me. Now I try to play every other strategy RPG sort of in that way. What can I do? How will this game let me exploit it? And I sort of compare every strategy game I've ever played to FF Tactics, definitely unfairly. Yeah. But that's also just how powerful that game was to me.
I think when we're looking... Oh, go ahead, Sollosi.
It was my first strategy RPG. I played it in the early 2000s, and it's very, very important to me. It's my favorite PlayStation game.
I think with this, we kind of have to think about what exactly are we saying with essentiality, and the kind of two ways that I see it is we could either say these are the 10 games you must play, or these are 10 games, and I think if you look at this list, anybody who has a passing interest in RPGs will find at least one of these games to be something that they'd really like. And I think with basically either of those metrics, and you might have a different way of viewing what exactly Essential 10 would be, I think Tactics passes both of those with pretty flying colors, because it is different from anything else on this list.
Yep.
And it is something that, on its merit, is... I mean, it was probably for the 2016 list, like the number 11 or 12 game that y'all were talking about. And I think it's time to give her her crown.
I think so.
I think Tactics is a wonderful game. I think the PSP remaster even puts it over the top, except for the spell slowdown. I know, because someone's going to comment about it.
But the iOS version
bother me.
the iOS version is almost the best of both worlds. I think that I don't own a tablet, but I think the best way to play FF Tactics War of the Lions is on a
Or
tablet.
jailbreak your Vita.
I don't know.
Honestly,
touch controls are not my favorite, but I understand.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I would probably agree with that. And I don't think I would say that for just about any other game. There are probably a couple, but this is a wonderful example of it because you have the added gorgeous cutscenes, like the grass whistle scene that is now animated.
Lovely.
Is stunning, just stunning. I mean, I love this game. When I was playing it, one of my friends said that this was my second job for a few weeks because I put as much time into Tactics as I put into my actual full-time job. So yeah, I would definitely want Tactics in our Essential 10, even if there is already a Final Fantasy game in there.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer, personally.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think the learning curve thing is reasonable, but, like, I don't know. It's hard for me to remember, if I'm being honest with you. Like, I played the game first when it first came out, and I was 12, and, like, I struggled at the beginning. But, like, I've played it, like, probably 9 times since, and, like, you really don't need to grind nowadays. Like, I think that actually, for people who, like, take the time to, like, really understand what it's doing, it doesn't really require much of a grind. And even if it does, like, the options you have and the fact that it was the Tactics RPG that created interest in Tactics RPGs. Like, I bought it when I was 12 because, like, it said Final Fantasy on the cover. And I also think that's kind of important, like, in terms of, like, how significant it is to, like, things like Fire Emblem and things like that. And like Sollosi said, like, I actually don't love Tactics RPGs, and one of the reasons I think I don't is because, like, when I played them, I'm like, this isn't Final Fantasy Tactics, which is unfair, but, like, Final Fantasy Tactics is absolutely brilliant. It's my second most replayed RPG probably of all time, and I think it's to me, it's like slam dunk, no brainer. I can't believe Steambot Chronicles or Kingdom Hearts 1 made it over in the last one, so it's a no brainer to me.
And myself.
I will thank
I do.
Marcos for getting Steambot Chronicles on the list, and blame Peter for getting Kingdom Hearts 1.
Oh, look at that.
Welcome.
Get Final Fantasy Tactics on this one, then. Let's go.
FF Tactics was my big regret for not getting on the previous list, but also I was kind of the Zach of last year. Most of my favorite games on my list made the top 20 in the episodes 5 years ago. But I really would like to see Tactics on this list. I'm going to put it on the maybes for now, but I think there's a lot of
put it on! Just put it on!
Yeah. You keep waffling. It's got enough support. Put on the list.
Go. Please.
It's on.
I'm not getting annoyed at you. Don't worry.
It's the third game of the 2021 Essential 10, Final Fantasy Tactics.
All right.
It's 4-1.
Oh, I
so
know.
I
I don't care. It's fine.
No. I wasn't saying that to you. I'm just worried, like, that I've annoyed Sollosi.
No. I'm not annoyed. I'm looking at we have to cut something, and unless we want to revisit Lunar 1 versus 2 again, I
mean, I don't have an opinion on Lunar
offer for
other
cut?
than I think there can be only one.
I do not think we should have both.
I have an offer for cut so we can move things along.
Yes.
Eva, you don't have to do that.
Really though?
Eva.
You don't have to do that. I mean,
No, because this.
Go ahead.
I don't think it's going to make it through because right now if I'm asking all y'all if you want Transistor on the Essential 10, is it going to be there? I would be for yes. Sollosi said he might have an alliance with me, but I think it's a bit more wishy-washy.
I would say yes. I would say yes for Transistor. I think a Supergiant game belongs on the list. Transistor doesn't play any other game on this list, and I would support Transistor over most of what's remaining. I think I would.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'll put my cards out a little bit. I would support Dragon Quest XI and Skies of Arcadia over Transistor, but other than that, it's a struggle a little bit. Oh, and Suikoden 2, I guess, as well.
I think Transistor, unfortunately, yeah, like, I understand why you've offered it up, Eva. It's probably the last game on this list that would make my list. It's probably joint for my least favorite Supergiant game, and I think I said this last week as well.
Did.
Like, yeah, I honestly, I hate to do when you compare it to the rest of the list, but like, and I think it does some things brilliantly, and like everything that Eva, myself, and Sollosi discussed in the December episode is totally valid and it is wonderful. But I have so many caveats with it, and I don't think I don't look at it in the same way I do a lot of the other games on this list, personally. I don't, unfortunately, have a very strong argument for it to not be there, but like, I just think I don't love how it plays necessarily. I think it's got an interesting customization system, but you can easily lock into like a really comfortable build really early on, and that's it. It sort of encourages customization, but in a roundabout way.
I think that Transistor...
I like the story.
I had a similar issue with the combat system. It was a struggle getting through the first zone for me a little bit, because I hadn't found a playstyle I liked. But once I settled on something, and my skill list had filled out a little bit, it became very fun for me. And even though it's my third or fourth favorite Supergiant game out of 4, I still think it's awesome and 100% worth playing.
Yeah, when I say least favorite, I'm saying like they've got 4 games, and I'm saying like, if I were going to stick a number on it or a rating on it, it would still be like better than most. But like, I just think out of the rest of the games here, no, it doesn't deserve to be there. So I'm fairly in favor of cutting it, unfortunately. And I love it, and I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
I mean, like I like Transistor. Like, it is a really good game. And it has really beautiful art direction and really excellent music. And the combat is fun. But I think, like with Alana, I do have just a few caveats with it. And it's like, it's just in really crowded company. Is really the bottom line. Is like, yeah, this is good. But compared to everything else that I'm seeing on this list, it's like, I would be hard-pressed to put it on to the final cut.
If you're volunteering to sacrifice Steve, I'll move it to the deleted list. But you have my support if you want it to survive a little longer, at least.
Well, the way I'm seeing it is just like that this needs to move along, and Transistor is not one that's really going to make it through, which is fine. I'll just say that I think it's an excellent game. I think it is. It was on my list, and I would definitely say that it's an essential game. I think that what it does in 10 hours, most games can't even accomplish in 60.
Yep.
So I think that it's one of the most flawless experiences, at least I've had, in a video game, and I will always and forever push this game as not being the sophomore slump that I've heard a couple of people refer to it as. Not people on this podcast.
No,
but people who are like, oh, I love Bastion. Transistor.
People on the Random Encounter podcast people on the Random Encounter podcast around 2014 had that kind of attitude about it. When I mentioned to Rob Steinman that I was playing it, I think he gave me a grossed out face emoji.
I will take that up with Rob Steinman after this podcast.
Excellent.
Should we call him? Is he going to be okay?
I'm sure he's just fine. In the interest of moving things along, Zach, I think we should probably cut both Lunar games.
No.
Really?
I disagree.
Okay.
All right, never mind. Okay.
But in seriousness, I will sacrifice Pokemon. Just because I get the objection to it, and there's tons of other games that are probably better suited for an Essential 10 list. We talked about it. We like it.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Eva You didn't get much of a chance to speak about Pokemon. Is there anything you wanted to say in particular around it, or is?
Yeah, sure. So I've played basically every game in the main series of Pokemon, except for I've played Moon but not Sun, so those sorts of situations. And I would say that Black and White and Black 2 and White 2 are the best games in the series. I think they're both. For everything that Pokemon tries to do, I think these are the best articulations of it. Both these games in the series, or I guess all 4 of the games in the series. I don't know if Pokemon should be on our Essential 10. And I say this as somebody who currently has a Meryl and Bayonet plushie on her wall and just got a backpack of a Gengar. So I think they're amazing, but they're only a little bit better than the other best Pokemon games. So I wouldn't put it on the list, but absolutely recommend it. If you can get your hands on it, great games.
All right. Thank you for your honorable sacrifice, Peter, but Pokemon Black and White are off the list.
Other cut, Persona 5 Royal.
Yeah.
It was on my list, but Persona 4 Golden is already on the original Essential 10, and Persona 5 Royal, on a good day, feels like one of the greatest games I've ever played, and on a bad day, feels like a game that made me kind of hate video games. So,
yes. I mean, I've not played Royal, and I think, Royal is only, a year and a bit old. Well, it's not in Japan, obviously, but, yeah, this was probably my next cut as well, and I feel like I'm going for Eva's list a little bit, which I feel really bad about. But it's one of the stylish and best playing turn-based RPGs on this list. But I think some of the narrative decisions in it are extremely dated. And again, I'm referring to vanilla Persona 5. I don't know if Royal changes a lot of those problems that I have with the original. It's also 135 hours and a lot of it is unneeded. I think
that's really the thing. Is Vanilla P5, I enjoyed it, but it's that game is too long. If any one game, this I feel like they have decided that these games need to be these 100-hour behemoths when they could get the point across in half that.
And I totally agree. I think my time as an adult is more valuable than it was as a child, and I sometimes resent games that insist on being longer than I feel they need to be. And I wish that more games looked and sounded like Persona 5, because it is gorgeous, visually and musically. And the combat feels snappy, the dungeons are really cool when you're sort of in the middle of them and sneaking around. But story-wise, it is so poorly paced, and even though I like many of the characters, and
I can think of someone in 2, 3, and 4 that I like better in almost every situation.
Yeah,
basically,
it's I don't think it's one of the best Persona games other than presentationally.
I'd say that given its length, there's a lot of things that Persona 5 Royal and Persona 5 do really well, but the things that it does really well, namely aesthetics, are worn out by the increased length, and the problems that it has are only exacerbated by the increased length. So it does a lot of good things, but the length of it does kind of ruin it a little bit. So
I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's a good game and worth playing, but I would recommend at least 2 other Persona games before 5.
Yeah, I think my favorite, if I recall correctly, my favorite Persona game got cut in the last Essential 10, and but even go.
Oh, I didn't know you were a big Revelations guy, Peter.
Well, was I?
Hey,
but no, but even looking back at Persona 4, it's that game has aged really well in some aspects, and it's aged like milk in others, but. And 5, I think, is kind of unfortunately destined to do the same thing. It was people were over the moon about it when it came out, and now that we've settled into it, if people look back, it's yeah, okay, this had some issues.
Our crowd is looking back at it like that, but get ready for a lot of Persona 5 spin-off games before they even start sniffing Persona 6. We're in the middle. Yeah, we're in the middle of the 2020-2021 version of the Golden Arena Q phase right now.
We've already gotten Q.
Is it?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh yeah, we've already gotten the 3DS Q that came out. That came out in 17 or 18, right? That game's all right. Yeah. I wouldn't put it on. I wouldn't put either Persona Q or Q2 on our Essential 10, but that game's all right. But let's move on. Is there another thing that we feel good about cutting? Because I'll make a suggestion if no one else will.
Well, I'm going to throw it out there for debate because it's already come up a few times, but people keep saying that there shouldn't be another Final Fantasy on the list, and Final Fantasy IX is my favorite game in the series. It's my second favorite game of all time. I almost would have put it on the list over Final Fantasy VI, and 6 is my second favorite game in that series. But 9 does a lot of the basics so well, and it goes back to a lot of systems that the original games, like jobs, the main cast have all got their own set jobs. The customization system is really simple. I think it's got one of the best stories in the entire series. And so is 6. That's the problem. They're both, to me, so important. But I know it's got issues. But I just want to throw it out there and see what people think, because we have 2 Final Fantasy games on this list.
You know what? I'm going to change my tune. Yeah, let's keep FF9. FF9 is too good.
Oh.
I love FF9, but I'm a little concerned that our list might end up being 40 or 50% Square Enix.
Right. And I think, like I say, I love FF9, and, really, I would have had it over. If I'd been on... In 2016, I would have fought for it over 6, and I think that would have been controversial. But I hate that we're all throwing in sacrifices but I guess that's just the nature of who we are as people on this podcast. I'm very indecisive. But I adore it. It is essential to me, and I think essential to the PlayStation 1 library. But it's a turn-based RPG.
I love FF9. I love a lot of the characters in it. I love how it was it was a bit of a scale back from 7 or 8. In 7 or 8, you could customize characters to do anything, but in FF9, characters had a little bit more defined roles, and I think that's more interesting in team building and team design when you do that, because in FF7 or 8, it's other than some statistical and limit break differences, how much of a difference is it putting in Red 13 versus Kate Shi? But while in FF9, you really have to think about how you build your team, and that's something I really value in an RPG. And FF9 is a extremely beautiful, fun, cool version of a classic Final Fantasy game. I think it's great, I don't know if I want to put it on the list, though, because there are games among the remaining finalists that I care about more, and that are also traditional turn-based RPGs.
I beat 9 to completion, I don't know, whenever it came out. It was a long time ago. And I've been replaying it lately, and I like it. I think it's a delightful game, but as you said, if I'm comparing it to things like Lunar or some of the things we haven't even discussed yet, like Undertale, I don't think that I can personally put it forward, even though I think that it's a delightful game. It's essential
to me, and that's all that matters.
I agree with you. If it's my vote, I can't vote it up, I guess, just because of what else is on the list and how important those games are to me.
I want to support you, Alana, but the only problem is what else is on the list. That is for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I knew coming in that I was the only person who put it. You put Tactics and 14's there, and
there's also a lot of Final Fantasy, as you noticed.
Exactly, and a lot of Square. We've only put Square published games on this list so far. So let's put Skies of Arcadia in the top 10.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm there for it.
Yeah,
look at that! There we go. Done. We don't even need to
Skies
discuss it.
Yeah, lock Skies.
There we go.
I've played literally an hour of it, and I don't care. I feel like Skies of Arcadia is the RPG of retro.
I have never played it, but it is on my short list to play as soon as I have the opportunity. So yeah, I am absolutely.
It is the game. Sorry, Peter.
No, go.
It Yeah, it is the game I want more than ever to be made available to a new audience. Like it is at the top of every list. Remake it for PC, remake it for current consoles. Put it on mobile. Okay, maybe don't put it on mobile. But my secret dream. I know I've joked about this before, but I seriously would adore it if in a theoretical Yakuza 8 they just put all of Skies of Arcadia in that game. And like Ichiban finds an old Dreamcast. Someone tells him Skies of Arcadia is kind of like Dragon Quest, and then you get to play all of Skies of Arcadia in Yakuza 8. That's my dream. But
Okay, with the year 2023, let's go.
They're not announcing it until next year at least, because they got Ryu Gakutoko Studio has a lot of Lost Judgment to promote in 2021. But Skies of Arcadia is everything that we said we love about Lunar, how colorful and optimistic and sort of how it has a spirit of adventure and wholesomeness to it. I think Skies of Arcadia has all of that, and it's just one of the best versions of a turn-based RPG that communicates fun and positivity. It's
I mean, it's got like it's dated in certain ways, but like as much as I'm enjoying playing through Lunar, like I think Skies maybe does a lot of the tone stuff better, but maybe that's just because there's 8 years on it, and it's also got some of the best side quests in any Japanese RPG ever. Like I love base building in Suikoden 2, but Skies of Arcadia was like one of my first RPGs, and like that's where I see it from. Like the characters have way more defined roles in your base, and they're all useful. And this is just one of the best. I think we said this last week. It's one of the best world maps in a video game.
I adore the world map in Skies of Arcadia. It is so fun, and I forget the exact number. It's 24 or 30 or something.
It's 24 or 26 crew members.
Let's say 24. But recruiting 24 random citizens that you meet throughout the world to be your pirate crew, and then building your base based on who your cook is and who your carpenter is, etc. is so satisfying. And one thing that Skies of Arcadia does that Suikoden doesn't is you get the Blue Rogues super move where everyone that's on your ship jumps in for a super attack, and that never gets old at all, one bit. Even
20 years down, yeah.
Blue Rogues,
it's nice,
attack!
It's nice as well because this was another one you tried to get on the list 5 years ago, so I think it deserves to be here.
I support it.
If we're done with Skies, I have a dual proposition. Of locking Bloodborne and cutting Danganronpa. I will sacrifice Danganronpa.
I would like to cut Danganronpa.
As much as I love that game, and the culture surrounding it, we talked about that on the last episode. The point is that I think Sollosi made last time that 999 is already on the first list, and it's like, again, it's in very crowded company. Meanwhile, Bloodborne, From Software is sort of defined modern action games, if we're being honest. Like, that, there is so much influence that company has had, and I feel like one of their games absolutely needs to be considered for this list. So... Yeah, I think so too. I think Bloodborne is also,
Eva, Bloodborne was on your personal list. Do you support this move?
Yeah, I would definitely put it up for consideration. I think that Bloodborne has, just incredible combat and world building. If you want to go down a rabbit hole of just trying to pick out the tiniest details in the environments that you traverse, Bloodborne is that game. You stumble across one thing and it leads to an entire different storyline or an entirely different way of viewing a particular area that you're in. It's really a game where you can engage on so many different levels. You can take it in the totality of what it is and see it in that holistic way. You can take it as a mechanically driven wonder, and it's excellent for that. You can take it as just, an environmental storytelling piece. If they had something like how Assassin's Creed does their, like tourist mode or whatever, and I think it would still succeed in that. I think it's an amazing game. The only thing that I think holds it back are the late performance issues, which will get figured out at some point on PS5. and the fact that it's kind of light on RPG mechanics.
There is one game that... I shouldn't say, how do I rephrase this? Rob Simon has been bugging me to play a From Software game for as long as I've known him. Mm-hmm. And probably the one he tries to get me to play the most is, it's all of them, but Bloodborne is the one that he's been trying to sell me on the hardest, especially since he says it's a little bit more Devil May Cry than Dark Souls, and we did have to cut Devil May Cry 5 at the beginning of this episode.
It's the fastest of the FromSoft games, from what I know, or from what I've tried anyway. Yeah.
Sekiro is also pretty fast paced, but Sekiro is very defensive oriented. You really got to figure out how to parry. Whereas Bloodborne is all about evasion and aggressiveness. So it's it's definitely in terms of if you're a fan of character action games, there's a little more to grasp onto there.
Yeah, I feel like there's a trilogy of PS4 RPGs that get talked about the most. One of them is The Witcher 3, which is not here. Nier Automata, and I think Bloodborne as well. I think Bloodborne is one of the defining games of the last generation.
I agree. I mean, and if it's just a personal taste vote, I vote no, only on personal taste, because I have played the first couple hours of Bloodborne a number of times, and I think they're really boring. And it's just a personal taste thing. It really is. I'm bad at them, first of all. That is 100% true. I'm terrible at action games in general, especially ones that are actually hard, like Bloodborne is. But if I'm gonna make any sort of argument, I'm gonna go back to something Eva said. It doesn't feel like an RPG to me. In terms of the way that it plays, it feels like it's more about your skill than anything. Not that I'm saying it's not a deserving. I am certain. I consent to the masses on this particular thing, or people who have actually finished the game or better video games than I am. But if I was going to vote, I wouldn't personally vote for Bloodborne. But I recognize other people's opinion on this particular thing, and I'm sure that I just don't get it.
I'm leaning towards being in favor of putting Bloodborne on the list because I think the reason that it gets accepted as an RPG is because it's an action game with a lot of RPG elements, and it's necessarily put in the same family as the Dark Souls games, which are I think more clearly RPGs. That whole genre is sometimes called Soulsborne now.
The customization's actually no different from Dark Souls. Maybe it's slightly, but
you have blood gems, which are essentially materia.
And
that's true.
It's heavily exploration driven in a way that you might even compare it to a Metroidvania. Is that fair to say?
That's a common comparison.
Okay, I've only played the very beginning of Bloodborne. I thought it was intriguing, but I was in the middle of something else or a podcast game.
Also, when was this list about RPGs when we've got visual novels up for contention? So I don't really get why that's a point.
It is called the Essential Ten-2, and there is no RPG necessarily in that title, and we are not going to endeavor to define what an RPG is in these episodes. And I believe RPGFan does have a Bloodborne review, don't we?
We do. We certainly do.
The only reason we didn't cover Sekiro is because Sekiro doesn't have any stats. So.
And also, Rob Simon was no longer on staff.
Yeah, and he would have done a better job of fighting for it than I would have.
I am okay with putting Bloodborne on the list and sacrificing Danganronpa, because I was going to, even when I was thinking of games to suggest we cut, Danganronpa was, crossed my mind, and I'm interested in I am okay with putting Bloodborne on.
Let's do it.
Yep. Go for it.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
All right, it's on the list. We have 5 out of our essential 10 finished, but something like, oh geez, I guess that means 15 more games to discuss, or minus 4, so 11 more games to discuss.
We need to trim these considered ones, I think.
I think we should maybe cut both Lunar games. Because I would rather have. I think Mother 3 and Suikoden 2 are stronger contenders than the 2 Lunar games, even though I really would like to see Lunar 2 on the list. And I'm not going to back down from my Lunar 2 is better than Lunar 1 stance.
I think that we should lock Mother 3 and Suikoden 2, bringing the list up to 7, and cut the other 3.
including FF9.
I don't mind because we were making arguments about Square, and I feel sad that Lunar's not going to get on there because I feel like it is an important thing that we should include. But obviously, I haven't played 2, and in a way, they are slightly dated in some ways. But I do really like Silver Star Story Complete. But I 100% want Suikoden 2 on the list. 100%. No, in Mother 3, I'm more like 90%. But then I don't think I've got enough to cover the rest of the bases on the rest of the list.
I think my
personal picks.
Yeah. I think I'm something like 99% on Suikoden 2, and more like 70%.
I just want to point out that,
Mike,
you said you wanted both of them cut, and they've both been cut immediately. And I disagree with the Lunar thing, but you're going to do whatever you want. So continue.
What?
I disagree.
Does anyone else? Okay, I think we should cut both. Zach thinks we should keep Silver Star. Does anyone else
think we should keep one of them without even having a conversation about it?
The reason we're not having a conversation about it is because we're already at the 2-hour mark.
Ah, that's a great reason.
I'm sorry, but unless we want to record the rest of this another time, we gotta start moving.
Okay.
Let's look at some other finalists we haven't discussed yet. Does anybody object to me cutting The World Ends With You?
I kind of do.
I haven't played it,
but I won't. Yeah.
I played it for the podcast 5 years ago. I was a little. It didn't click with me the way it clicked with Josh and a lot of other people in RPGFan. I think it's over designed, and and the gameplay didn't always click. Right when I got used to one partner, they make you change partners, and the game's totally different. And I really don't like the Chapter 3 partner. I would not put The World Ends With You on our list. Is anyone else? Go ahead, Eva.
I think this is an excellent game. I think this is a game that it's kind of, if I'm going by signature qualities, its signature quality is being explicitly tied to a certain system, and that makes it very fascinating in the way its mechanics articulate. However, that sort of essential quality that it has, I don't think is nearly as strong as the essential qualities that Nier Automata, Final Fantasy XIV, Tactics, Skies of Arcadia, and Bloodborne have. So I think it's an excellent game. I really love this game. It's definitely one of my favorites. But I understand if it shouldn't go through.
I'm with Eva on that one. I played it for the first time pretty much at her suggestion, and I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of stuff about that game that relates to me on a personal level, but it's also one that I can see people not getting into as well. So we can cut it if we need to.
Zach or Alana, what are your feelings on it?
I only played 5 hours of it. I wasn't super into it, but it's I trust Eva and Peter's judgment as it being something that's significant.
Yeah, I haven't played it, unfortunately, and I hear what a lot of people have said about it. There's things about it that don't jive with me, which is why I haven't picked it up yet, but I do want to, so yeah, I don't mind. I would vote against, but
so we have Peter and Eva still interested, Alana and I voting against. I guess, Zach, you're also voting against?
I suppose. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
Yeah, we're good with cutting it.
All right. Let's cut it.
Don't sound so sad about it. We're the ones who are fighting for it.
Okay, so we have 5 on the main list, 5 cuts, 5 maybes, and 5 sort of undiscussed so far. So we're in even quarters.
I'm gonna offer one more cut suggestion from my own list. We can get rid of Stardew Valley. I do love Stardew Valley is a wonderful game. It's very chill. It's a great indie success story. It's not gonna survive against these other contemporaries.
Yeah, I adore it, but I feel a sort of similar way. I'd like to fight for it more, but I feel like everyone's feeling a bit defeated, and I'm like,
I have played it a little bit. I put about 2 hours into it, and that was enough for me to learn that maybe I'm not into farming simulators. But that is really a personal taste thing, and not anything rude about Stardew Valley. I've also tried multiple times to get into Animal Crossing games, and once tried to get into a Harvest Moon game, and just can't. But that's definitely a me thing and not a problem with Stardew Valley.
All right.
So we're sure we're cutting it?
I feel like it's one of those games that, like, does a particular thing really well. So I think it's like... And, like, everybody I hear talk about it, I haven't played it, but, like, everybody I hear talks about it in, like, such a reverent way that, like, I feel like it probably deserves consideration, but, like, it's hard to talk about with, I mean, like, two of us have played it, and both of them, like, think that it's, like, excellent, so it's hard for me to say for sure.
Yeah, alright, if I do want to, like, stick up for it a little bit then, I don't want to extend this too long. Yeah, I adore it. Like, it is super special to me. And yeah, it does everything better than Harvest Moon and everything. Like, it is the only game in that genre I would probably recommend, like, even over Animal Crossing now, I would say. But I know that's not something we cover anyway, but yeah, the problem is these 5 games are all, like, very high up on everybody's personal lists, I think, and yeah. And we've still got, like, ones on the consideration, you know. Get rid of FF9 because it's sitting there. And, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm okay getting rid of FF9 because I think there are games I care about much more still under consideration. Any objections from Eva or Zach?
I don't have any objections personally.
All right. With apologies to Alana, Final Fantasy IX is cut. But we'll leave Stardew Valley under consideration for now.
It's fine.
Let's address one of the elephants in the room. I really want Dragon Quest XI on this list, but it also would be the 4th Square Enix game. And I think there is opposition to it because I know Peter tried to cut it in the previous episode.
Both Peter and Eva did, yeah, and I vetoed it through. I think I got it through.
So, Dragon Quest XI. Dragon Quest is the formative JRPG ever made, and Dragon Quest XI is sort of the modern interpretation of classic Dragon Quest concepts that I completely adored with tears in my eyes in 2018 when I finally played it. It's maybe my favorite RPG of the whole 2010s, with apologies to Nier Automata and a few other games. But again, I am a Dragon Quest fanboy. I love games with sort of with fun teammates and party building and turn-based combat, and it just checked so many of my boxes, other than a great soundtrack.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But I mean, the game is excellent. Like, and it's just completely gorgeous to behold. And in the subsequent re-releases, the music is at least brought up to tolerable.
It's probably the essential turn-based RPG of the 21st century.
What? Dragon Quest XI is?
Well, I think, like, I mean, Persona 5's got style, but, like, Dragon Quest XI is literally like a classic RPG made playable.
I think that's reductive, but...
I know it's reductive.
No, Persona 5 does have... Yeah, that is. Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. I think Persona 5 does have substance
I think I've
as well.
come around to Dragon Quest XI. So honestly, I'm in favor of locking it, just because it is, like, this really... It's an excellent game. And now for all of our, like... the original release definitely had some issues, and it's definitely, I don't think for everybody, but Dragon Quest is a cultural institution.
I also just love Jade and Sylvando so much, especially Sylvando. I'm not sure there's a more delightful side character in an RPG than Sylvando the past 10 years. Is that hyperbolic of me? Definitely.
I think at this point I'm the only one who's in favor of cutting it. So I suppose that can land on the list. But before that, I'm just gonna say that I played 40 hours of it, and it seemed to me like
40.
It seemed to me like a game that is wonderful for Dragon Quest fans, and perhaps could miss the mark for people who have not played the previous games in the series. So I think I thought it was a fine game, but I didn't find it to be essential. But if that's But if that's 4-1, I'm not gonna hold out or waste our time here.
I'm ready to lock it unless there's additional objections. I mean, Zach, I know you're a Dragon Quest fan, Zach. Do you think it should be a lock?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I personally think it's like when we're talking about quintessential things. Like, I think Tactics is the quintessential tactical RPG. Bloodborne is the quintessential Soulsborne, and this is, to me, like, if I was ever gonna recommend like a single turn-based RPG to somebody, it would be Dragon Quest XI, because I think it perfects what it's doing.
Lock it. Put it on.
I'm gonna lock it, and I think I want to go back to something that we talked about probably 90 minutes ago by now. Mother 3 and Suikoden 2. The more I'm thinking about it, the closer I am to just locking both of them.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so too. But
Yeah,
I don't know why we've held off. Like,
I
Suikoden 2
think
was,
I wanted to see how
yeah.
the opinion played out on more of these games. But I was, especially with Suikoden 2, I was close to. I'm as close to supporting them over basically every other remaining game.
Yep.
I think they're in. So that means
2 spots left.
Put them
we
in.
have 8 spots locked and 2 left for 6 games.
Yep. I've played all but 2 of them.
I've played all but one of them. Eva, we haven't talked about it yet. Disco Elysium.
Disco.
I
think.
I played. Go ahead.
I think if we're going to be cutting Transistor, I really want us to have a non-Japanese RPG, not because I dislike Japan, because I think I've made that abundantly clear here, but I think it's important to have this game because it is expertly written. I think it's probably the most flawed game on this list of the ones that we still have up for contention, with the possibility of Lunar, because I've never played those. But it's such a peaks and valleys sort of thing that I think it's really interesting for anyone to experience, because every person is going to have a different experience with it, given the content of the game as well as how you're approaching the game. If you're approaching the game as sort of a neoliberal, a Blairite, a centrist, you're going to have a very different time with it than the commie that's playing it or the right winger that's playing it. I think it's a fascinating game, and I think it has a little bit to introduce and help anyone with.
I played it for maybe 3 or 4 hours since we last recorded, and I found it really fascinating in how it interprets like classic CRPG mechanics and sort of visual novel style. Well, not really visual novel style, like Western RPG style dialogue trees, and the writing is so strong. But both the internal monologue stuff and the dialogue with your detective partner and with people you're interviewing or interrogating, it's a very well written game. But it got me in situations that I almost couldn't believe. Like, I had to leap across a ledge to try and to investigate something, and I failed. But when I reattempted it, I took off my pants and shirt because they were giving me negatives at the savoir faire stat, and then I was able to make the jump.
Yeah.
And things like I was talking to I think a corrupt union boss, and I was trying to just get basic information from him, but he offered me a bribe that I declined, and then he asked me why I didn't have my gun, and I remembered that I lost my gun and felt deep shame for it, and both of those were blows to my mental health that caused me to die in the middle of a dialogue tree. And in a way, I find that maddening because I did not know those were traps I could fall into, and in another way, I found that fascinating because it makes me think in a way that other dialogue-driven games and other RPGs never forced me to think. So I'm very interested in playing through this game, but I feel like I want to start over now. So I have a character that is less ruthlessly driven by logic and has a little bit more emotional toughness to him. because that was part of how my starting stats shook out.
The game over states that I got in this game are hilarious, from like me putting on a performer's bow tie to being in a meeting with that union boss and him telling me that I needed to sit in this chair, and it turning into a basically a boss fight of endurance. If your health isn't high enough, that chair will kill you, just because it's so uncomfortable. Which, as somebody who really understands what that's like, that was hilarious.
Now, my very first death in the game was well before meeting that union boss. Again, this is a murder mystery, and very early in the game, you examined the victim's corpse, and the smell was so overpowering, I vomited. My character vomited, and then a little kid nearby made fun of me, and then I felt so bad about that I decided to give up, and then that was a game over.
It's great. Like, the game overs are hilarious. They made me laugh every time. So I think this game is doing some really strange, hilarious things, but it also is kind of brilliantly designed in a lot of ways. So I think it deserves a spot on the list. Personally,
I'm giving it a hesitant yes, because I look at what's left, and my picks would probably be Lunar 2 and Disco Elysium, I guess, with a Link to the Past maybe knocking on the door a little bit. We haven't talked about Undertale or Link to the Past yet.
I'm gonna agree with locking Disco Elysium just because it is kind of a modern classic. It's probably the most recent entry on this list, but for the sake of variety, and just for what it does so successfully, it seems like a really good lock for this list.
And also, just again, the thing that struck me the most about Disco Elysium was the writing and dialogue. And looking at every game on this list, I think the only ones with better dialogue might be FF14 and Nier Automata, which were like the locks beyond locks for us.
I mean, I haven't played Disco Elysium, but Eva, you've played Undertale, right?
Yeah.
Why? It's a question of genuine curiosity, because I don't know. I haven't played Disco Elysium. Why would you think Disco Elysium would move above something like Undertale?
I think that Undertale harkens back with nostalgia to things that have already come, and it does do some things that are progressing forward. But I think to me, Undertale feels more like a nostalgia trip or a reintroduction to an older style than Disco Elysium is, where Disco Elysium feels very forward-thinking, and it feels like a video game for the time that we're living in. So I think in a 2016 Essential 10, that Undertale, well, it wouldn't be up for it then because it would be so recent, but I think it would have felt more essential in 2016, but I think Disco Elysium feels more essential in 2021.
I feel like Undertale is modern in some sensibilities, though, even if it is harkening back. And again, I haven't played Disco Elysium, but I think Undertale, and I thought about this after the episode last time, people were saying that Danganronpa was a cultural revolution, so was Undertale, and perhaps bigger even. I didn't feel like that was a fair criticism of Undertale last episode, and if I'm going to pick two games out of this list that I would personally want to see, I think one of the Lunar games should definitely be on the list, and I think it would be between Undertale and Disco Elysium, but personally Undertale, because that's the one I've played.
One thing maybe we haven't mentioned yet, and I'm not sure I would vote for either of these games, but Undertale and Stardew Valley might be the biggest indie game success stories of the past 10 years.
Sure. I mean, in terms of number of students I've had who talk to me about it, those two they far outstrip anything on this list ever. So, yeah, I agree.
I like Undertale a lot. I played it once through. I accidentally locked myself out of the perfect no kills ending a little too early, but was still blown away by a lot of what it did. But again, I think that a lot of the community and discussion around it overshadows it a little bit and made me like it less in the intervening 3 or 4 years since I played it. I don't remember exactly when it came out.
It was 2015 it came out.
Yeah, so I think I played it either in May. I think I played it late 2015. So it's longer ago than I thought.
I disagree with that again. I think you can ignore the community. That's fine. I do it with Pokemon, but Like, look at Deltarune and the buzz that generated just by a demo of a chapter.
Is anyone really set on putting Zelda: A Link to the Past in one of the last two slots over two other games?
No, that would be the first one I would cut.
It feels like a shame, but
yeah.
Personally,
I like Link to the Past a lot. I'm glad it made this 20, but I think it's the first I would cut as well. Or well, maybe I would cut Stardew Valley ahead of it, but that's I've mentioned I don't like farming games. So so long, Link to the Past. We hardly knew you. You are the best, one of the best, and maybe the most influential Zelda games, and a very important action RPG for the Super Nintendo. But yeah, we got to start making some hard decisions in this podcast.
And I'm okay with cutting Stardew as well, because I mean, again, we talked about it. I like it, and it is probably a significant game, but it's in pretty high standard company.
Yeah, I do feel strongly about it. But if I'm going to split hairs between indie games, then I think Disco Elysium and Undertale maybe edge it. If we call Disco Elysium kind of indie, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's quite indie. I don't think it's. I mean, it's not EA that's publishing that thing.
It's a small developer, yeah.
So okay, I do not think it is the time to cut Disco Elysium or Undertale yet. But does anyone feel strongly about Stardew Valley over two others?
Never played it. Sorry.
I love it, and the only games that I haven't played are Disco Elysium and Lunar Eternal Blue, and I feel like there are stronger feelings on those. Like, it's the essential farming game, but, like... Yeah.
Alright, let's cut Stardew Valley. Now, I want to go around the room quickly. Of these last four, Lunar 1, Lunar 2, Disco, Undertale, tell me what your two choices would be. I'll go first. I would pick Lunar 2 and Disco Elysium.
I would pick... Oh, sorry. Are you going to go around the room? Or?
No. Alana, please go.
I would pick Lunar 1 and Undertale.
Zach, go ahead.
I would also pick Lunar 1 and Undertale, personally. Although, Disco Elysium would be like right on both their tails.
Yeah.
Personally. Like, I would be very happy to see Disco Elysium on the list, personally.
Okay, Peter, what two would you choose?
Disco Elysium and Undertale.
And Eva, which two would you choose?
Disco Elysium and Undertale.
Okay, so that's... I'm the only person that voted for Eternal Blue, but we had 3 for Elysium and 4 for Undertale.
Yeah.
I think it's time to lock Undertale and then have the last spot be between the two Lunars and Disco. Any objections to locking Undertale? I guess I would be the only objector. I think Undertale is awesome and wonderful, but I find the community annoying, and that's definitely not a good reason to cut it.
No, but I mean every game.
That is not a good reason to cut it.
I think every game community is annoying. Like, that's reductive, but like at the same time, it's like, yeah, like I don't think the Undertale community is any worse than like the Danganronpa fan base or the Pokemon.
You're right, and the Danganronpa fan base. If you want to go to a horny subreddit, that's not a bad choice.
It is. It is honestly frightening.
Yeah, that is.
But
yeah, most people play games, and I would say most people don't interact with the online communities. So.
No, that's correct. And again, I really like Undertale, but I just did not get super deep into it. And annoying daunting might be a better adjective than annoying for how I find its fan base. But it is a very special game, and I think that having sort of super indie representation on the list would be cool. So my objection to Undertale being on the list is very weak indeed, and I just locked it in. So we have one spot left for Lunar 1, Lunar 2, or Disco Elysium. And I am going to make a concession that I'm going to cut Lunar 2. I'm the only one that cares strongly about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to
say something surprising here. I think that we have a lot of really great turn-based RPGs on here. I don't think any of them really capture like the particular spirit that Lunar does. I don't think anything does really, but like other things try to.
The thing is, I think that Skies of Arcadia gets there.
And maybe I haven't played Skies, so I can't speak to that. So if that's the case, I think Disco Elysium is more special and more important. I would put Disco Elysium above Lunar.
I think I would have put Lunar 2 above Disco Elysium, but maybe not 1. But no, you're right. If we want to value uniqueness and specialness, and I do, I think maybe it is Disco Elysium.
Yeah,
Number 10.
I'm okay with this.
I can't object, but yeah, I do feel strongly about Lunar 1 just because it's really important. But yeah, I guess there is a lot of turn-based RPGs there, and I feel like,
I love Lunar, but the other turn-based RPGs on the list, Mother 3, Suikoden 2, Dragon Quest XI, Skies of Arcadia, Final Fantasy Tactics, which is kind of its own thing. I think I would put all of those ahead of Lunar 1 or 2. Personally.
I wouldn't, but like recognizing the importance of what Disco Elysium is doing, and I've seen enough videos of it, and I trust Eva's judgment. I've read her review, which was just like fucking sorry, it was just like totally delightful. I can't argue against Disco Elysium over Disco Elysium is like something important, and I'm not saying that Lunar is not saying something important because I actually think it is, but it's different, and we've already covered what Lunar is doing to some degree.
I found Disco Elysium baffling and frustrating, but I also want to go back and try and play more of it. Like that's where I am on it. And again, it would be the only Western RPG on the list, and there isn't a game like it even on our older list. Glancing through it, it's even though they're Western made, this is not like Diablo 3 or Mass Effect 2. I promise.
There won't be anything else like it either, from what I understand.
Oh, they announced that it's not going to have a follow-up?
Well, I think even then, like, how are you going to replicate that? Like, it's just so of its time and of its moment. Like, well, I say that. It's like, that's a generalization. But, like, nothing has done anything that Disco Elysium has done. And, yes, the only thing that could probably replicate it is a sequel. But we wouldn't have that without this. So, put it on.
Eva, I am going to lock Disco Elysium, but can you give us some final thoughts?
It's a game that caused me to question some of my own beliefs, and not in like I guess I'm going to just fall back deeper into being, an unrepentant commie. But in terms of thinking more critically about organizing for power and the spaces that we create for dialogue about, criticisms of capitalism and even being in a union. Even had me thinking about, the fact that I'm a union member and what exactly does that mean. And it's really something incredible. I really appreciate this game.
All right, I think we have our Essential 10, and it might have been forged with some late episode weariness, but I think we have it, and it's time to stand by it. This was a weird episode to make. I know it's gone slowly, and we're probably tired and hungry, but I think this exercise was, it was valuable because the 2016 episode was. They were weird and argumentative, but also I think a fun discussion of something like 41 or 42 cool RPGs, and this was ultimately us talking a lot about 35 great games and arriving at a list of 10, and I think we were successful. This was thanks so much for being on this admittedly difficult episode with me, and I hope that there aren't too many hurt feelings. Said the guy whose feelings are still a little bit. Yeah, said the guy whose feelings are still a little bit hurt that Yakuza 0 did not make the top 20. But at least we did have Mother 3 and Disco Elysium on the list to stick it to the man in our own ways. But listeners, you listened to us probably for 2 weeks talking about these 35 games, and thank you for sticking with us all this time. But let's talk about the rest of July and a little bit of August. Later this month, we're doing 2 episodes on the Hakuoki, a otome female-centric dating sim game. It's a very popular otome game that's had multiple versions and sequels, I think. But we are having a panel of 4 women talk all about Hakuoki for the last 2 episodes in July. I have not listened to the episodes yet, but Hillary has been keeping me updated on how exciting the discussion has been. So please look forward to 2 episodes on Hakuoki in June. I'm sorry, July. Wow, okay. Now I'm forgetting the months of the year as well as the passage of time. Hakuoki getting 2 episodes later in July. But coming in August, we are doing 2 episodes on Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. That is a PS2 classic that recently had a PS4 and Switch remaster. I think most of the people are going to be playing the remaster, but that is a game with a reputation that precedes itself, and I'm a little bit terrified, but because I've only just barely started it, but that is a game that has come up the recommendation request pipeline a couple times, so I know that some of our listeners are going to be excited to hear us talk about SMT3/N. Zach, have you? I know you're on the episodes with me. Have you played it before?
I have never played it before. I'm about 5 hours into this playthrough. It's not too bad so far, but I get the impression that I haven't hit the hard stuff yet. So.
Oh boy, okay. I have not played that much of it, so I probably ought to get on that later tonight even. But also coming in August, we're doing an episode on the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Those are 2 Japan-only Phoenix Wright games that are finally getting localized in July, so we're going to give us some time to play them and then talk about both of them in a spoiler cast in August. We did an episode on the Phoenix Wright series a year or 2 ago, and that was a lot of fun, so I'm going to try and get back some of those same people for these episodes. But if you are good at your counting numbers, listeners, you might also realize that August is going to house episode 300 of Retro Encounter, and we also have something very special planned for episode 300. So please look forward to Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, episode 300, and the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles coming in August. But if you want to reach out to us in any way for game recommendations or what have you, you can email retro@rpgfan.com. That's the best way to find us. You can also comment on RPG Fan's message boards, visit our Facebook page, our Instagram, our Twitter, our Discord, our YouTube, our Twitch, something streaming every day on Twitch, something posting every day on the main website, rpgfan.com. Please interact with us however you choose. There's also 3 other fine podcasts hosted by RPG Fan. That's Random Encounter every 2 weeks about randomness, Rhythm Encounter usually every 2 weeks about RPG music, and Phoenix Edge usually every week about a variety of topics with more current events on Phoenix than on Retro. And you can review those 4 podcasts, including Retro Encounter, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or however you're listening to us. Please give us feedback. We love feedback. But let's share how you can reach out to us at a more individual level. Let's share some social media platforms, starting with you, Alana.
So the best place to find me is Twitter. I am at Alana Hagues, or I am on the RPG Fan Discord as Alana.
Now, Eva.
You can find me on RPG Fan's social media accounts, or you can find me on my personals on Twitter and Instagram as @EvaLease.
Now, Zach.
You can email me at zachw@rpgfan.com, or you can find me on Discord at zachw.
Now, Peter.
You can find me on Twitter at IHaveFury, or email me, peterT@rpgfan.com.
Now to finish off this 5-person Sentai roll call, my name is Mike Sollosi. You can find me on Twitter at TheRealMonsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times, and on RPG Fans Discord as Monsoon Mike. This was a long one, folks. But let's before we sign off for real, let's go over what the official RPG Fans Retro Encounter Essential 10 are. Starting with the 2016 10, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Chrono Trigger, Diablo 3, Final Fantasy 6, Kingdom Hearts, Mass Effect 2, 999, 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, Persona 4 Golden, Steambot Chronicles, Xenoblade Chronicles, and now, in order of selection, the 2021 Essential 10, Nier Automata, Final Fantasy 14, Final Fantasy Tactics, Skies of Arcadia, Bloodborne, Dragon Quest XI, Mother 3, Suikoden 2, Undertale, and Disco Elysium. Thank you, good night, and good luck. I miss Yakuza 0.
Malig voor ieder more.